I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. All the ways to communicate with us right there on your screen. You could send us an email. thestory@kgw.com is the address, or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. We have a lot to talk about tonight, and we're going to start by talking about homelessness and the way that Multnomah County hopes to take at least a bite out of the problem with a new housing initiative. Here's Blair Best with our big story.
There are mixed reviews for a new county program giving incentives to landlords renting vacant units to homeless people. A week after its launch, we checked on MoveIn Multnomah and found some housing groups aren't sure it's such a good idea. A call to action for landlords to ease the homeless crisis in Multnomah County. About a week since the program launched, 45 landlords have volunteered, offering apartments and single-family homes.
We have a lot of really great people in our community who do want to be a part of solving homelessness.
The Joint Office of Homelessness will match the landlords with someone who needs housing, a process that can take up to a week. Certain screening barriers are eliminated, like income requirements and eviction history.
So we'll shortly start to see people be matched from these homeless service providers into open units that landlords have reached out to add to this program.
The housing market is so hot. Are there enough vacancies to be a part of this program?
Absolutely. And while it may not be thousands of people that get placed through this specific initiative, I hope that it is. But ending one person's homelessness is a big deal and worth it.
While off to a strong start, some landlords say they aren't in favor of the program. We'll get back to that. But first, let's break down what they would get if they took part. Guaranteed rent for 12 months, a holding fee while the tenant is placed, a hotline with tenant case managers, and payment for damages. Even with all that, some landlords say it still raises a red flag.
I'm not sure this one, is as promising as it's being presented.
Ron Garcia runs the Rental Housing Alliance of Oregon and works with landlords in Multnomah County. He believes a transition period is needed before a move to permanent housing.
And I'm real concerned that just that 180 flip from having lived in a van or in a tent going into a home without any other prep is an issue.
Another concern, the potential of disrupting neighbors.
Homelessness is also rooted to behavioral problems, whether it's drug use or mental health crises. So that's not going to be solved by putting a roof over their head.
Oregon law recently stopped landlords from evicting tenants without a cause. Garcia says the change could create problems.
I know there's a lot of really great people on the streets that know how to live. I'm not accusing it as a slam dunk, but I just don't know that as a wide range policy, there's enough safeguards in this to help landlords be able to manage it properly.
I don't think anyone is assuming any one piece of this puzzle is the solution. It's really an ask for partnership.
The $4 million in funding for MoveIn Multnomah comes from the Tri-County budget. Landlords have until June 30th to apply and get the benefits.
So Blair, interesting report there. And is this program open to anyone? People living in tents on the street, that sort of thing?
Well, yes and no, Pat. People living on the streets must already be getting services from an organization that works with those experiencing homelessness. So yes, it can be anyone who doesn't currently have housing, but they must already be working with a homeless service. And it's those services that connect them with MoveIn Multnomah. Okay, so maybe that's why there's been some good success with the small pilot programs they've done before on this. And we also heard one of the landlords mentioning concerns about mental health issues, drug issues, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Is the county offering counseling and help to those folks? So in some cases, I'm told the prospective tenants struggling with addiction or mental health issues must already be working with recovery programs or receiving treatment in order to qualify for permanent housing through this program. Pat?
Oh, great. Thank you, Blair Best. That was great stuff, as always. As the leaked Supreme Court deliberations on abortion continue to reverberate around the nation, we want to take a deeper look at the issue with a Northwest lens. First, some polling that is both interesting and perhaps outdated. In January of this year, 67% of Oregon voters told DHM researchers abortion would be a very or somewhat important factor in determining who they would vote for as governor. Then DHM asked the voters how important various issues would be when they vote this year, and abortion was way down on the list, number 13. That has likely changed now. Our political analyst Len Bergstein of Northwest Strategies says the leaked court papers will help boost interest and could help Democrats.
The good news is it's, confrontative and it jolts everybody. The bad news is it will get absorbed into the body politic, and it may not be quite as dramatic in November as it is right here in May.
Already on both the national and state level, Democrats are using the incident to energize voters. Bergstein expects that will continue all the way until November.
My guts tell me this is a big issue. This helps define for Democrats what the stakes of the race are in a way that they haven't been able to find a definition for why voters should care enough to vote for them.
A compilation of polls by the New York Times shows that in Oregon, roughly 62% of people say abortion should be mostly legal, while 35% say it should be mostly illegal. In Washington state, 61% say it should be mostly legal and 34% say mostly illegal. And when we talk about abortion, a majority of the time we're now talking about a woman taking pills to induce the abortion. Nationwide, the use of abortion pills has risen steadily, with 54% of abortions in 2020 being done with medication, according to the Guttmacher Institute. In 2021, the FDA lifted a restriction that would require people to get the pills in person and now allows them to be sent through the mail. The biggest example of that is a group called Abortion on Demand. It provides legal telehealth abortions in 21 states, the dark colors there on your map, and that includes Oregon and Washington. Its website notes that it gets abortion pills to people who need them as quickly and safely as possible. Oregon's legislature recently approved $15 million to expand abortion care in Oregon. It's aimed at women who are low income or live in rural areas. It's also intended to help women in eastern Oregon who may currently travel to Boise, Idaho for abortions, but that state will stop all abortions if Roe is overturned. And it could help fund programs that care for women leaving Idaho for abortions. The Guttmacher Institute reports 1,290 abortions happened in Idaho in 2017. But the Oregon Capitol Chronicle reports that getting the money out the door is still several steps away from happening. None of it has been awarded yet. And while we're talking about polling, we have another poll for you to take a look at tonight that asks Republican voters in Oregon who they're thinking of voting for in this month's primary to be their nominee for governor. This was conducted by Nelson Research. They're a public opinion firm based in Oregon. They talked with 514 likely Republican voters over last weekend. Let's take a look. Former House Minority Leader Christine Drazen appears to be in the lead. Almost 19% of the people polled said they would vote for her. Bob Tiernan is in second place with about 14%. And Bud Pierce has 9.5% support. Stan Pulliam, Kerry McQuiston, and Mark Thielman all have about 6% from the people who were polled here. And 27.4% of the Republican voters are still undecided. Well, you better get going with your decision. The election is coming soon. Now, to help you decide, let's take a look at one of the biggest issues, gun violence. Shootings and homicides have broken records over the last 2 years in Portland. In our debate with 4 of the Republican frontrunners for governor this week, we asked the same question that we asked the Democrats. Do you feel safe walking around downtown Portland, and how would you solve the gun violence crisis?
Do I feel safe? I couldn't even go to downtown Portland on Saturday for a campaign meeting without being confronted by Antifa. We called the police. It was over, almost 20 minutes until someone answered the phone. We were right across the street, from their precinct there. Nobody responded. So absolutely don't feel safe. I also want to kind of, push back on gun violence. This isn't a gun problem. These guns aren't just walking around and shooting themselves. We have problems. We have a culture of criminality. In the 70s, we had 30 officers per 100,000 people. That number today is 8. We have proposals to triple the size, of the state police.
Yeah, definitely not safe. My late wife and I purchased a second home in Pearl 14 years ago. You could walk all over the place any time of day and night, felt safe. Now you don't feel safe at all in many times. We need to support the police much better, more police, better training, better equipment, a governor and a government that stands by their side. We need to have a police that's aggressive in taking away weapons from drug cartels and from gangs. We need to have programs so that young people don't go into gangs and in fact, have activities that are beneficial to them and to society. And we must get the homeless off the streets once and for all, and that whole criminal culture of homelessness, drug use, and alcohol misuse.
Crime, as everyone knows, is skyrocketing, is completely out of control and continues to climb higher each year. And it isn't just Portland. And I refuse to just talk about it in terms of Portland because it's all over the state. But to be direct, yes, I feel completely unsafe in downtown Portland. And at the age of 66, my husband and I finally had to go out and get a permit to have a gun, to register and get firearms, because of our expectation that we would not have law enforcement if we needed it. At the base of this, if you ask law enforcement across the state, and I have, the problem is substance abuse. The problem is that we passed ballot measure 110, which legalized hard drugs.
We have a significant issue with public safety, and it's not just Portland, it's in other parts of our state. So what are we going to do about that? And I think we need to, if we're talking specifically about Portland, we've got to start with cleaning up that downtown area, getting rid of the blight, getting homeless off the street and into rehabilitation programs, and preparing that city for reinvestment, right? Because if we want businesses to come back, we have to send the signal that we're stable and we're safe. It's absolutely vital.
We did not hear from the leaders in the poll, Christine Drazen and Bob Tiernan. Drazen dropped out of the debate hours before it started. And even though Bob Tiernan's campaign has a lot of money, he did not meet the threshold for individual donors set by the Portland City Club, who hosted the debate. But we do have interviews with both of them, and you can find them on our KGW YouTube page. And you can also see the full Republican debate right there. Washington State still has a backlog of untested rape kits.
It shouldn't take this long for a rape kit to come back.
And a survivor who's waiting for answers from one of those kits is sharing her story.
I'm always looking over my shoulder. I'm paranoid I'm going to run into the person.
When the story continues. Welcome back. Keep sending your questions and comments to our email address. It's thestory@kgw.com, or leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Starting this week, Washington State is required to process DNA rape kits within 45 days of receiving them. That's a lot faster than the 2 years it's been taking up to this point. But as Catherine Cook reports, some survivors are still waiting.
No one should get away with that. And no means no.
Jane, as we'll call her, is a rape survivor. We've agreed to record her in shadow and distort her voice to protect her identity. Jane was assaulted last year in Southwest Washington. Traumatized and scared, she still found the courage to call 911 and go to the hospital for a rape kit.
You want justice for not only yourself, but, for other people if this happened to them by the same person.
But more than 8 months later, she's still waiting for results.
It shouldn't take this long for a rape kit to come back.
In Washington, Jane's story is not unique. 3 years ago, the state had a backlog of 10,000 untested rape kits, the impetus for a new law passed in 2019, one that mandated that Washington State Patrol must process DNA samples from rape kits within 45 days, starting May 1st of this year. But as of May 1st, WSP says they're not quite there.
We committed to cutting that wait time by over 90%, from 600 plus days to 45 days. We're almost there. I wish we could. Had it not been for COVID, we would have been there months and months ago.
Chris Loftus is communications director for WSP. He says more staff and new robotics at their expanded Vancouver lab allow the facility to operate 24/7. State Representative Tina Orwell headed up most of the test kit legislation.
When we picked the 45 days, we knew it was a big lift, and we said, what do you need? And I feel like, you know, despite COVID, despite some of the challenges they face, they really are getting us so close.
State Patrol says on average, they get 193 new sexual assault kits every month. They hope to reach the 45-day turnaround goal with new cases by the end of this year. As for the backlog of older kits, WSP is outsourcing them to other labs to make room for more.
WSP says of the 10,000 backlog kits they've tested, roughly 25% have come back with usable data. 10% of those included DNA from existing suspect profiles, some from cases around the country.
That means we have a serial criminal. And so the assumption that those were of little to no investigatory or prosecutorial value was just simply wrong.
For Jane, every day she waits for her rape kit results is stressful.
I know for me, I'm always looking over my shoulder. I'm paranoid I'm going to run into the person.
She hopes the waiting is almost over.
It's something that should be reported, and those people should be off the street.
In Vancouver, Catherine Cook, KGW News.
Still ahead, after a series of hate crimes, a mosque in Washington state found a creative way to increase security. It does not include electric fences or armed guards. Instead, the community formed a group called the Mosketeers. When the story continues. This week, 2 Portland places of worship have been targets of hate crimes. The first happened Monday at Congregation Beth Israel. Someone lit small fires outside the synagogue and vandalized the building with anti-Semitic graffiti. Then on Tuesday, someone tried to light the Muslim Community Center in Northeast Portland on fire. There was only minor damage to the building, but this happened while people were inside. Police are investigating both arsons, and they don't know if the cases are connected. Listen to what a leader at the mosque told us today.
So to have something like this take place where you've got someone attempting to commit arson at a religious facility that is focused on a community and community growth, community living and establishment to better the community that we find ourselves in. I'm born and raised in Portland, Oregon. I'm not from another country. I've been here all of my life. I'm an Oregonian through and through. So it's just really, it's very hurtful. And to think that someone has that much hate in their heart that they would do this to a community that is longstanding in the Portland metropolitan area while there were individuals from the congregation praying is just very sad. It is one of those things where you don't want to become hyper vigilant, but it raises the alert higher to let us know this is the situation that we're living in.
They're not the only Muslim community dealing with threats. A mosque in Olympia, Washington has also been targeted. They're increasing security with help from the community. Drew Mickelson reports.
Robert's here.
They shoot the breeze here every Friday.
Hi. Good. How you doing?
And their presence is appreciated.
Thanks for coming. Thanks for having us.
It's just a testament of humanity, you know, multiculturalism and the acceptance of diversity.
Heading into the Islamic Center of Olympia, many of the members acknowledge the group of non-Muslims out in front.
When they walk by on the sidewalk and they look over at us and they do this, we know what that means. That's universal language for thanks, we appreciate you.
Linda Anthony heads up
it's our pleasure.
The Mosketeers.
That's not fair. You know, you should be safe in your house of worship.
The volunteers have been here every Friday for more than 5 years now at the request of the mosque.
Maybe the people who would throw flash bombs won't do it while we're here.
Last November, someone dropped an explosive device, perhaps fireworks, in front of the mosque. But that was by no means the first incident here. In 2017, members of Olympia's mosque went to the community.
And I want you to think deeply of someone that you love,
asking if anyone would be willing to stand guard during the Friday afternoon prayers, the most attended of the week.
Having somebody out there, right, who is watching makes a big difference to us.
They're not armed and haven't had to be. In all the years, there's only been one person who came by yelling obscenities. The thought is just their presence wards off any hate.
Well,
Mustafa Muhammad Ali would like to see the Mosketeers go worldwide.
It's very catchy, right? Maybe we should register it.
I can't see a time when I won't want to come up here.
Linda Anthony says this experience
We're here for the love.
is more spiritual for her than any church she's ever been to.
We've got a relationship now, so that's what keeps us coming is friendships.
That was Drew Mickelson reporting. Northwest Natural Gas has a lot of customers in our region. A lot of people like me. In fact, 2.5 million customers. And they want a rate hike. But now advocates for residential customers, they're pushing back. Alma McCarty has our story.
It can be complex. When a utility company wants to increase its rates, they go before the Public Utility Commission explaining why customers should pay more. Sometimes those rate increases are justified. You want systems to work for everyone all the time, and they need upgrades and improvements to run smoothly. But sometimes advocates for customers, like the Oregon Citizens Utility Board, fight back. Here's Bob Jenks, the executive director.
We have economists and experts that go in and look at this case. We get to ask for data and information from the company. We looked at sort of all the company surveys. We did look at the advertising. We can look at sort of anything that they're asking customers to pay for and say, is this appropriate or not?
Jenks explains their argument against a rate hike has to be evidence-based. They can't just say, we don't like this, we don't want it. In this particular case, Northwest Natural is asking the Public Utility Commission for a total 11% increase. The average customer would see a monthly increase of $7.42. The utility says it's modernizing its IT systems, relocating regional resource centers to be seismically secure, and improving its natural gas distribution systems, its pipelines. The Oregon Citizens Utility Board takes issue with some of the requests, such as increasing shareholder benefits and increasing advertising and promotion of their brand. Jenks says the proposed increase might not seem like a lot on the surface, but it can quickly add up.
It's primarily about heating your house in the winter. So most of your gas costs go between November and February. So in those months, you're not going to get a $7 increase. You're going to get a $15 or $20 increase because it's coming on a $150 or $200 bill.
So what comes next? Rounds of more evidence and testimony and the potential for a lower rate hike than what was initially proposed. The Oregon Utility Commission ultimately decides, so we'll know for certain in October. Pat?
Thanks, Alma. Hey, keep sending your questions and comments to thestory@kgw.com. When we come back, a way you can help your community. For this week's Hey Help campaign, we're asking you to donate to Cascadia Behavioral Health Care. They provide mental and behavioral care, addiction treatment services, and primary care to vulnerable communities in Portland. They also help connect people with housing. If you want to donate, just hold your phone's camera up to the QR code right there on your screen, or you can go to kgw.com/heyhelp. This is a micro donation drive, so feel free to give any amount, no matter how big or how small. Well, that's the end of our program. Thanks for watching on this Thursday night. And remember, the story, our story, well, that never ends.